In the heart of ancient West Africa, where the red earth meets the endless sky and the baobab trees stretch their ancient arms toward the heavens, there lived a girl whose beauty was like the first light of dawn breaking over the savannah. Her name was Amara, and this is her story. Amara's world was not one of comfort or ease. No, her world was filled with the harsh demands of a stepmother whose heart had grown cold as the harmattan winds. Every morning, before the sun had even thought to kiss the horizon, Amara would wake to the sound of her stepmother's voice cutting through the darkness like a blade. "Girl, get up. The water calabashes won't fill themselves." The stepmother, Mama Keso, had married Amara's father when Amara was barely 7 years old. Her own mother had passed away like morning mist, leaving behind only the memory of gentle hands and lullabies that once filled their small compound with warmth. But Mama Keso brought winter to their home. She had 2 daughters of her own, Fatu and Bintu girls, who were spoiled like fruit left too long in the sun. They would lounge in the shade while Amara worked. They would eat the best portions of food while Amara made do with scraps. They would wear the finest clothes while Amara's dress grew thin and faded like old dreams. But it was the trips to the stream that Amara dreaded most. Every single day, without fail, Mama Kessa would point her long finger toward the path that led through the forest. "Take the large calabashes today, Amara. We need extra water for washing. And don't you dare come back until they're completely full. Not a single drop missing, you hear me?" The stream was far, so very far from their compound that by the time Amara reached it, her feet would be dusty and sore, her breathing heavy from carrying the empty water vessels. But she never complained. Not once. Because deep in her heart, Amara knew that her trials were shaping her into something stronger, something more beautiful than gold. On this particular morning, the morning that would change everything, the air felt different. Electric. Charged with the kind of energy that comes before great storms or great changes. Mama Kesso's voice was sharper than usual as she thrust not 2, but 4 large calabashes into Amara's thin arms. "The chief's wife is visiting today, and I won't have her thinking we're some poor family who can't even keep clean water in the house. Fill all of these, and make sure you wash them properly at the stream. I don't want to see a speck of dirt anywhere." Fatu giggled from her sleeping mat. "Maybe if you hurry, you'll be back in time to help prepare the special meal for our guest. But knowing you, you'll probably take forever as usual." Binta joined in the cruel laughter. "Just don't trip and spill everything like last time. Mama was so angry, I thought she might actually beat you with her walking stick." Amara said nothing. She simply balanced the calabashes carefully, checked that her faded head wrap was secure, and began the long walk toward the forest path. The sun was still low in the sky, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. Birds called to each other from hidden branches, their songs mixing with the soft whisper of wind through tall grass. As Amara walked, she began to hum. It was her mother's song, the lullaby that still lived in her memory like a precious jewel. The melody seemed to make her steps lighter, her burden easier to bear. She hummed as she passed the old termite hills that stood like ancient monuments along the path. She hummed as she navigated around fallen logs and pushed through hanging vines. She hummed as the forest grew thicker and the stream's distant song began to reach her ears. When she finally emerged into the clearing where the stream danced over smooth stones, Amara felt that familiar sense of peace wash over her. This was her sanctuary. Here, beside the clear water that reflected the sky like a mirror, she could forget about Mama Kesso's harsh words and her stepsister's cruelty. Here, she could simply be. Amara knelt beside the stream and began her work. First, she washed each calabash thoroughly, scrubbing away every trace of dust with handfuls of fine sand. The water was cool against her hands, soothing away the soreness from her long walk. She took her time, knowing that any imperfection would bring punishment when she returned home. As she worked, she continued humming her mother's lullaby. The sounds seemed to attract the forest creatures. A family of bright green birds perched on nearby branches, tilting their heads as if listening to a concert. A small antelope emerged from the undergrowth to drink at the stream's edge, showing no fear of the gentle girl who shared its watering place. Even the butterflies seemed to dance to her rhythm, their colorful wings catching the filtered sunlight. But Amara was so absorbed in her work, so lost in the peace of the moment, that she didn't notice the sound of approaching horses. She didn't hear the jingle of brass ornaments or the soft voices of men who had stopped just beyond the tree line. She was completely unaware that she was being watched. Prince Kwame had been hunting with his companions since before dawn. They had tracked a magnificent antelope deep into the forest, following game trails that few people ever traveled. But when they reached the clearing by the stream, the prince forgot all about hunting. There, kneeling beside the water like a vision from an ancient story, was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. Her skin was smooth and dark like polished ebony. Her movements were graceful as a dancer's, even while performing such a simple task. And her voice was like music itself, pure and sweet and filled with a sadness that touched something deep in his chest. "My prince," whispered his companion Kofi, "we should continue the hunt. The morning is growing late." But Prince Kwame held up his hand for silence. He couldn't look away. There was something about this girl that called to his soul, something that made him feel as though he had been searching for her his entire life without even knowing it. He watched as she carefully filled each calabash, her movements deliberate and patient. He watched as she paused to smile at the small antelope drinking nearby, her whole face lighting up with genuine joy at the creature's trust. He watched as she stood and tested the weight of each water vessel, making sure she could carry them all safely. And in that moment, Prince Kwame made a decision that would change both their lives forever. He dismounted from his horse. "Wait here," he told his companions quietly. "My prince, you don't know who she is. She could be anyone. Her family might not be suitable for." I said, "Wait here." There was something in the prince's voice that his men had never heard before. A certainty, a knowing, as if the very air around them had shifted and shown him a truth that had been hidden until this moment. Prince Kwame walked slowly toward the stream, his footsteps soft on the forest floor. He didn't want to startle her, didn't want to break the spell of peace that seemed to surround this magical place. But when a small branch cracked under his foot, Amara's head turned. Their eyes met across the clearing. And in that instant, both of them felt the world tilt and realign itself around this moment, around this meeting, around this recognition of something that had been written in the stars long before either of them was born. Amara's breath caught in her throat. Never in her life had she seen a man so handsome, so regal, so filled with a presence that seemed to make the very air shimmer around him. His clothes were rich and fine, his bearing noble and strong, but it was his eyes that captured her completely. Eyes that looked at her not with the dismissal she was used to, but with wonder, with recognition, with something that made her heart beat like drum rhythms in her chest. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They simply stood there, separated by 20 feet of forest clearing and a lifetime of different worlds, yet somehow connected by invisible threads that neither could name or understand. Finally, Prince Kwame found his voice. "Please," he said softly, taking a careful step forward. "Don't be afraid." His words were gentle, respectful, nothing like the harsh commands Amara was used to hearing. "I heard your song," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've never heard anything so beautiful in all my life." Amara's hand flew to her throat, suddenly self-conscious. She had not realized anyone was listening, had not realized that her private moments of peace and memory could be shared with a stranger. I should go," she whispered, reaching for the heavy calabashes. "My stepmother is expecting me." But even as she said the words, she found herself unable to move, unable to look away from this man who seemed to see straight through to her soul. "Your stepmother?" Prince Kwame's voice carried a note of concern. Something about the way she said it, the slight tremor of fear beneath the words, made his protective instincts flare to life. Amara nodded, still frozen in place. "She sent me to fetch water. I've already been gone too long. She'll be angry if I delay any further." Prince Kwame took another step closer, and Amara noticed that his movements were as careful and gentle as hers had been with the forest animals, as if he understood that she was like a wild creature who might bolt at any moment. "What is your name?" he asked softly. The question hung in the air between them, simple yet somehow enormous, as if her answer would unlock doors that had been sealed for lifetimes. "Amara," she whispered, and heard her own voice as if from a great distance. Amara, Prince Kwame repeated, and somehow the way he said it made her name sound like a prayer, like poetry, like something precious and valuable instead of just a word that usually preceded scolding or demands. "I am Kwame," he said, and there was something in his voice that suggested this admission was not given lightly. That his name, his true name, was something he shared only with those who mattered. And in that moment, as the morning sun climbed higher and cast dancing patterns of light and shadow through the forest canopy, both Amara and Prince Kwame began to understand that their lives had just taken a turn towards something neither of them had ever imagined possible. Something that would require courage they didn't know they possessed. Something that would challenge everything they thought they knew about their world, their places in it, and the power of love to transform even the most impossible circumstances. But first, there was the matter of 4 heavy calabashes full of water, and a stepmother who would be waiting. And questions that hung in the air like morning mist, beautiful and mysterious and full of promise for what was yet to come. Prince Kwame watched as Amara bent to lift the first of the heavy calabashes, her slender arms straining against the weight. Without thinking, he moved forward. "Please," he said gently, "allow me." Before Amara could protest, his strong hands were already reaching for the water vessel. Their fingers brushed for just a moment as he took the calabash from her grip. The touch sent lightning through both of them, a spark so powerful that Amara gasped and stepped back, her eyes wide with wonder and confusion. Prince Kwame felt it too, this connection that seemed to flow between them like the stream itself, natural and unstoppable. I can carry them myself," Amara whispered, though her voice lacked conviction. "I'm sure you can," Prince Kwame replied, his voice warm with something that might have been admiration. "But that doesn't mean you should have to." He lifted the calabash as easily as if it were filled with feathers instead of water. "These are heavy. How far do you have to carry them?" Amara gestured toward the forest path, her movement graceful even in her nervousness. "Through the forest, past the termite hills, across the grasslands. It's quite far." "And you make this journey alone? Every day?" There was something in Prince Kwame's voice now that Amara had never heard directed toward her before. Concern. Real, genuine concern for her well-being. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. No one had ever asked about her daily struggles before. No one had ever seemed to care whether her tasks were difficult or dangerous. "That's not right," Prince Kwame said quietly, and the conviction in his voice surprised them both. "A girl like you shouldn't have to." He stopped himself, realizing he was about to speak against her family circumstances without knowing the full story. But Amara heard what he didn't say. And for the first time in years, she felt seen. Truly seen. "My stepmother says it builds character," she said softly, then immediately looked down, afraid she had spoken too freely. Prince Kwame's jaw tightened slightly. He was beginning to understand the situation, and it made something protective and fierce rise up in his chest. "Your stepmother," he repeated carefully. "And your father? What does he say about these character-building exercises?" Amara's face clouded over like the sky before a storm. "My father passed away 2 seasons ago," she whispered. "The fever took him during the rains." "I'm sorry," Prince Kwame said, and his sympathy was so genuine that it brought tears to Amara's eyes. "Since then, it's just been me and my stepfamily." The way she said stepfamily told Prince Kwame everything he needed to know about her situation. "Amara," he said, and her name on his lips sounded like a promise. "Would you allow me to walk with you? At least part of the way?" Amara's heart began to race like a frightened bird. Walk with her? This noble man, this prince, for surely he must be nobility, wanted to walk with her? "I couldn't ask you to do that," she said quickly. "Your companions are waiting. You must have important business." "Nothing more important than this," Prince Kwame said, and the certainty in his voice made her look up at him again. Their eyes met and held. In that gaze, Amara saw something that took her breath away. She saw herself reflected back, but not as the burden she had always been told she was. Not as the inconvenience or the servant. She saw herself as someone precious, someone worth protecting, someone worth loving. The thought was so foreign, so impossible, that she pushed it away immediately. "I should really go alone," she whispered. But even as she said it, she was hoping he would insist. Prince Kwame seemed to understand her internal struggle. Then at least let me carry the calabashes to the edge of the forest, he offered. Your stepmother need never know I was here. The compromise felt safe enough that Amara found herself nodding. Prince Kwame turned toward his waiting companions and made a gesture that clearly meant, go on without me. There was a brief moment of what looked like heated discussion, but eventually the other men mounted their horses and disappeared back into the forest. They're not happy with me, Prince Kwame said with a slight smile. Won't you get in trouble? Amara asked, surprising herself with her boldness. Probably, he admitted. But some things are worth getting in trouble for. They began walking together along the forest path. Prince Kwame carried 3 of the heavy calabashes as easily as if they were empty, leaving Amara with just one to manage. The difference in her burden was so dramatic that she felt almost weightless. Tell me about your song, Prince Kwame said as they walked. The one you were singing by the stream. Amara felt heat rise in her cheeks. It was my mother's lullaby. She used to sing it to me when I was small. It was beautiful. Your voice is extraordinary. No one had ever called her voice extraordinary before. Mama Kesso usually told her to stop making noise when she hummed while working. She had a beautiful voice too, Amara said softly. My mother. She used to say that music was the language of the heart, and that those who could speak it would never truly be alone. Wise woman, Prince Kwame said. Do you ever feel alone, Amara? The question was so direct, so personal, that Amara stumbled slightly. Prince Kwame's free hand shot out to steady her, his touch gentle but firm on her elbow. I'm sorry, she said quickly. I wasn't watching where I was stepping. That's not what I meant, Prince Kwame said quietly, not removing his hand. Are you all right? The simple question, asked with such genuine care, broke something open inside Amara's chest. All the loneliness she had carried for so long, all the pain of being unloved and unwanted in her own home, came rushing to the surface. She tried to speak, to say she was fine as she always did, but instead tears began to spill down her cheeks. Oh, she whispered, mortified. I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm... Don't apologize, Prince Kwame said firmly. He set down the calabashes and turned to face her fully. Don't ever apologize for feeling what you feel. With infinite gentleness, he reached up and wiped away one of her tears with his thumb. The gesture was so tender, so unexpected, that it only made her cry harder. I am alone, she whispered, the words torn from some deep place in her soul. Every day, I am so terribly alone. Prince Kwame felt his heart break for this beautiful, gentle girl who had been carrying such pain. Without thinking, he pulled her into his arms. Amara stiffened for a moment, shocked by the unexpected embrace. No one had held her since her father died. No one had offered her comfort or warmth or the simple human connection of touch. But Prince Kwame's arms were strong and safe, and gradually she relaxed against him. She allowed herself, for just this moment, to be comforted. You're not alone now, he murmured into her hair. I promise you, Amara, you are not alone. They stood there in the dappled sunlight of the forest path, holding each other as if they could somehow heal years of pain with this single moment of connection. And perhaps, in a way, they could. When Amara finally stepped back, her tears had stopped, but her eyes were bright with something new. Hope. I should ask, Prince Kwame said carefully, are you promised to anyone? Betrothed? Amara shook her head. Mama Kesso says no man would want someone like me anyway. Too willful, she says. Too much trouble. Prince Kwame's expression darkened. Your stepmother is wrong about many things, I suspect. There was an edge to his voice that spoke of barely controlled anger. What about you? Amara asked, then immediately blushed at her boldness. I shouldn't have asked. Forgive me. There's nothing to forgive, Prince Kwame assured her. And no, I am not promised to anyone, though my father has been pressuring me to consider several options. Your father? The king, Prince Kwame said simply. Amara's eyes went wide. You're a prince? A real prince? Does that frighten you? Amara considered this carefully. It should, she said finally, but somehow, no. It doesn't frighten me. It just makes this all seem even more impossible. What's impossible? Amara gestured between them, this connection that neither could deny. This. Whatever this is. But you're a prince, and I'm just... You're just what? Prince Kwame challenged gently. Just the most beautiful, kind, strong woman I've ever met? Just the person who made me forget about hunting the moment I heard your voice? Just the girl who has somehow become the most important thing in my world in the span of a single morning? Amara stared at him, unable to believe what she was hearing. You don't know me, she whispered. I know enough, Prince Kwame said firmly. I know you're gentle with animals. I know you have a voice that could charm the spirits themselves. I know you carry heavy burdens without complaint and find beauty in simple things. I know you have a strength that most people never develop because they've never needed to. He paused, his eyes intense on hers. And I know that in all my life, I have never felt about anyone the way I feel about you right now. The confession hung in the air between them like a bridge that could either connect their worlds or crumble under the weight of impossibility. Prince Kwame, Amara began, but he held up a hand. Just Kwame, he said. When I'm with you, I don't want to be a prince. I just want to be a man who's fallen in love with an extraordinary woman. Love? Amara's voice was barely a whisper. Is that what this is? What else could it be? Kwame asked. This feeling like the world has suddenly become more vibrant, more alive? This need to protect you, to see you smile, to hear your voice every day for the rest of my life? Amara felt her heart hammering against her ribs. Everything he was describing, she felt it too. This impossible, overwhelming connection that seemed to have roots deeper than time itself. But even as her heart soared, reality began to creep back in. Kwame, she said, testing his name on her tongue and finding it sweet. Even if what we're feeling is real, how could it ever work? You're a prince. I'm nobody. I don't even have a home that's truly mine. We'll find a way, Kwame said with absolute conviction. Love like this, it doesn't come along often. Maybe never. We can't just walk away from it. Your father, the king, will never accept me. Then we'll change his mind. My stepmother will be furious if she finds out I've been talking to you. Then we'll be careful. The whole kingdom will think you've lost your mind. Maybe I have, Kwame admitted with a smile. Maybe love is a kind of beautiful madness, and maybe that's exactly what the kingdom needs. They had reached the edge of the forest without either of them noticing. Ahead lay the open grasslands that stretched toward Amara's village. The real world was waiting for them beyond the trees. The world of responsibilities and expectations and all the reasons why a prince and a servant girl could never be together. But for now, they stood in the space between worlds, in the place where anything seemed possible. I have to go, Amara said reluctantly. If I'm much later, Mama Kesso will send Fado and Binta to look for me, and then there will be questions I can't answer. Kwame nodded, though every fiber of his being wanted to tell her to forget about her stepmother and come away with him right now. When will I see you again? He asked. I don't know if you should, Amara said, but her heart was already breaking at the thought. I come to the stream every morning, she admitted quietly, just after dawn. Then I'll be there tomorrow, Kwame promised, and the day after that, and every day until you tell me to stop coming. He handed her the calabashes, making sure she could manage their weight. Be careful on the path home, he said. And Amara? Yes, don't let anyone convince you that you're not worthy of love, because you are. You're worthy of all the love in the world. With that, he turned and walked back into the forest, leaving Amara standing at the edge of the grasslands with her heart full of impossible dreams and her mind spinning with the memory of his touch. She began the long walk home, but for the first time in years, her burden felt light, because she was no longer carrying it alone. Someone knew her now. Someone cared about her. Someone thought she was extraordinary. But as the familiar compound came into view in the distance, Amara's steps began to slow, because she could see figures moving in the courtyard, more figures than should be there on an ordinary morning. And as she got closer, her blood began to run cold, because there, standing in animated conversation with Mama Kesso, was a man in royal clothing, a man whose presence could only mean one thing. Someone from the palace was here. And Amara had a terrible feeling that her morning at the stream had not gone as unnoticed as she had hoped. Amara's hands trembled as she approached the compound, the calabashes suddenly feeling heavier than they ever had before. The royal messenger stood tall in his ceremonial robes, his presence commanding attention from everyone gathered in the courtyard. Mama Keso was practically glowing with excitement, her usual harsh demeanor replaced by an obsequious smile that made Amara's stomach turn. "Ah, here she is now," Mama Keso called out as Amara entered the compound. "My stepdaughter, Amara. Though I must say, she's been terribly slow with her chores this morning." The royal messenger turned to look at Amara, and she felt her breath catch in her throat. His eyes were sharp and knowing, as if he could see straight through to her secrets. "Amara," he said in a voice that carried the weight of authority. "I am Bakari, messenger of His Royal Majesty. The king has sent me with a proclamation." Amara set down the calabashes with shaking hands and bowed deeply. "Your Majesty honors our humble home," she whispered. Bakari unrolled an ornate scroll, its golden edges catching the morning light. "By royal decree," he began, his voice carrying across the courtyard, "Prince Kwame, heir to the throne, shall choose his bride through a test of character and virtue. All unmarried women of suitable age are invited to present themselves at the palace in 3 days' time." Mama Keso's eyes lit up like stars. "Did you hear that, my daughters? The prince is choosing a bride. Fatu, Bintu, we must prepare your finest clothes immediately." But the messenger wasn't finished. However, he continued, his gaze finding Amara's face. "The prince has made one specific request. He wishes to meet the girl who sings by the forest stream each morning. The girl whose voice, he claims, could heal the sorrows of the world." The courtyard fell silent. Mama Keso's smile faltered as understanding dawned on her face. Fatu and Bintu stared at their stepsister in shock and growing jealousy, and Amara felt as if the earth had shifted beneath her feet. That would be our Amara," Mama Keso said slowly, her voice tight with barely controlled fury. "Though I'm sure there's been some mistake." "There is no mistake," Bakari said firmly. The prince was very specific. He described not only her voice, but her kindness to forest creatures, her grace in carrying heavy burdens, and her courage in facing daily hardships with dignity. Amara's heart began to race. Kwame had done this. Somehow, he had convinced his father to create this opportunity. This chance for them to be together openly, honorably. "But she's just a servant," Fatu protested. "She's nobody special." Bakari's expression grew stern. "The prince seems to disagree, and when the prince speaks, the kingdom listens." He turned back to Amara, and his voice gentled slightly. "You are to come to the palace tomorrow morning. The prince wishes to present you to the king and queen as his chosen bride." The words hit Amara like lightning. Chosen bride. Not just invited to compete, but chosen. Kwame had already made his decision. "This is preposterous," Mama Keso exploded. "My own daughters are far more suitable. They're refined, educated, well-bred. The heart wants what the heart wants," Bakari said simply. "And Prince Kwame's heart has chosen." He began to roll up the scroll, then paused. "Oh, and one more thing. The prince sends word that the girl by the stream need carry water no more. From this day forward, that burden is lifted from her shoulders." As if summoned by his words, the sound of approaching horses filled the air. Everyone turned to see Prince Kwame himself riding into the compound, accompanied by a small guard. He dismounted gracefully and walked directly to Amara, ignoring the shocked stares of her stepfamily. "Amara," he said softly, taking her hands in his. "I couldn't wait until tomorrow. I had to see you, to make sure you were safe." "Kwame," she whispered, still hardly believing this was real. "You did all this for me? I told you we'd find a way," he said, lifting her hands to his lips and kissing them gently. "Love like ours doesn't come along often. I wasn't going to let it slip away because of tradition or expectations." He turned to address the gathered crowd, his voice strong and clear. "I am Prince Kwame, and I have chosen this woman to be my princess and future queen. Not because of her family's wealth or status, but because of the beauty of her heart, the strength of her spirit, and the love that binds us together." Mama Keso opened her mouth to protest, but the prince's next words stopped her cold. "Any who speak against her speak against the crown itself." And so it was that Amara, the girl who had been sent to the stream as punishment, found herself lifted up to become the most honored woman in the kingdom. Her stepfamily could only watch in stunned silence as Prince Kwame helped her onto his horse and rode away with her toward a future filled with love, respect, and the kind of happiness she had only dreamed of by the quiet waters of the forest stream. Because sometimes when we least expect it, the very thing meant to humble us becomes the path to our greatest joy. And sometimes, love truly does conquer all.